Hello and welcome back to the Big 12 preview. This is the weekend spread, folks. This is one of our biggest shows every year. We have everyone on deck: Jameson, Ty, Boat, and Blake, and me, your host, Bobby Howard. We're here for a pretty packed show. This is the biggest the Big 12's ever been. We've never previewed a 14 or anything larger than 10-team Big 12. So this year we're doing things a little different. Ever since the dawn of the Schooner Pod, Jameson and I's very first podcasting session back in his old apartment in Midtown, we've been ranking the teams 1 through 10, 10 through 1, whatever, it doesn't matter. And we're back to do it again. So we're ranking top 10s. Anyways, big season for the Big 12. Pivotal. OU and Texas out. BYU, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati in. And Blake, as a resident Shield fan, you know, all of us three, we're moving on to the SEC, but you're sticking behind with the Big 12. What are your thoughts on this season? And I don't know, I want to hear from you. How are you feeling going into this?
No, I'm really excited. I think the conference is in good hands. Like, although we lose two of like the brands, I guess, in the Big 12, we gain a lot of depth, and kind of the challenge of ranking these teams, as we'll probably see throughout these rankings. A lot of teams very close together. There's like you're kind of nitpicking every single one in order to slot them in a true 1 through 10. I think that's not going to change whenever we go to the 16 team, Big 12, Big 16, whatever they end up rebranding it next year. I really enjoyed that. I think it'll make it exciting. I think it'll be a league where, although you don't have a elite powerhouse that is like probably consistently going to be in the top 4, you're going to have some of the most interesting conference finals races. You're going to have some of the most interesting playoff races, and probably going to this conference is going to generate a few playoff dark horses. So I'm really excited for this year. Just a little test sample of some of the new guys, get a little bit weirdness with OU and Texas still in there, and then I'm ready for the full 16 next year.
For sure. A lot of excitement for sure. And Todd, I will ask you, is there any bit of sadness with OU leaving the Big 12? What are your vibes with this final season?
I mean, I'm excited for the final season. Blake alluded to it. I think it's going to be fairly competitive. I think as we get into it, it's not going to be as competitive as it was last year. I mean, last year in retrospect, it was pretty clear who was going to win it all, but the Big 12 was really up in the air. And I believe on the preseason rankings, you had like preseason 5 and 6 in terms of Big 12 predictions. General consensus, not the Schooner Pod that ended up playing for the championship. 2 years ago, Baylor, I think on odds, had the second to last odds to win it. We kind of all agreed that they were the least likely to win it a couple of years ago, and then they won it. So it should be a competitive conference. I don't know that it's going to be as competitive as last year as we dive into that, but I'm very excited. I am very excited for what I think is going to be the outcome for the final year of OU and Texas in the Big 12. We'll dive into it. A lot of the odds setters and everyone else kind of have a general consensus on who the two teams in the Big 12 championship are most likely to be. I think it would be absolutely hilarious if that plays out as we're about to get into, but I think it is sort of bittersweet to be leaving. The Big 12 made some moves that unfortunately should have been made years and years ago that maybe would have changed outcomes, but you know, you never know what is going to happen when things change. And I think ultimately I subscribe to the conspiracy theory that OU and Texas saved the Big 12 by leaving it.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong in a way. I don't think the Big 12 would have ever been able to do this if OU and Texas didn't blow up college football and destabilize the Pac-12. But you know, either way, I'm fine with it. The Big 12 was never going to have the Arizona teams or Colorado in it if OU and Texas stayed, if nothing shook the boat. So, yeah, you're welcome, Big 12. Jameson, your thoughts on the final year of the Big 12? We obviously grew up with this conference the whole way, seeing a lot of changes. How are you feeling?
I feel really good. And as an OU fan, obviously, we're really looking towards the future. But I think having this last year in the Big 12, even though we don't have to play all of those teams that we have these wonderful memories with. And if you want to kind of live back on those memories, go back and look at our bye-bye series that we did this offseason, where we went through all of the not original, but like the one Big 12 teams that are there the past couple of years, not the new additions. and we kind of did a little memory section there. So go check that out. But it'll be fun to get something new and play, like in Provo for BYU. Play Central Florida at home and get to talk about the Dylan Gabriel connection. I think it's going to be a really fun season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not your standard OU Big 12 season we've had. It's going to be fun going to Nippert Stadium, all of that. It'll be cool. So anyways, let's get right into it. Now, as we mentioned, we're only ranking the top 10 teams. So there are 4 teams out, and we have 3 teams that we, in consensus, have not in the top 10. That would be Cincinnati, Houston, West Virginia. All 4 of us agree that none of those teams are in. So 2 newcomers not cracking the top 10. I gotta ask, and then West Virginia, who is kind of at the bottom. Like, I gotta ask
absolute
you,
poverty tier.
yeah, this is the trash tier. Like, universally agreed upon to be garbage. Like,
if everyone ranked, did anyone here not do just all 14? Because I did 14, I knew that West Virginia was going to be the easiest 14.
Who do we? So we
I only sit in my top 10. So
I know, but the way I made my ranking beforehand, I did like all 14, and I said, "Oh, West Virginia 14 easy," and I didn't even have to think about it.
Mm-hmm. I did not have West Virginia at 14.
Oh, he put Houston at 14?
I did not put Houston at 14.
Oh, wow.
I think Cincinnati's going to be really bad. Yeah. I think it's underrated just because of how well they've done recently, that Satterfield's coming in there, taking over when basically everybody in that program has either left for the NFL draft or has hit the transfer portal. They don't really have anybody on the defensive side of the ball. I never loved Emory Jones. I didn't like him at Florida. Did not like him at ASU. I definitely don't like him at Cincinnati. I just think they're kind of a under-the-radar bad team just because of, I guess, the last few years' success. I think they have no talent on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the Satterfield thing and the total drain. It's that, but I think people are going to overrate them just because of that logo and, that you saw them in the playoff recently. I don't have them last. I kind of think Houston's going to be pretty bad. But I mean, honestly, to me, it's a crapshoot between those 3 and my 4th team, which we'll talk about in a bit. Ty, what are your thoughts on these teams?
Yeah, no, I'm actually, so far, I'm 100% with Blake. I think buying Cincinnati right now, you're basically buying the Cavs right as LeBron left and going, oh, well, it's the Cavs, but then they don't have anyone that made them who they were. I think West Virginia, I was looking at West Virginia's schedule. I thought it was funny. They're arguably, I think, maybe the easiest case, like we just talked about, for being the worst. But I love the intangibles with West Virginia. Like I always talk about, every time we talk about West Virginia, no matter who's the coach, they always just seem to play scrappy. And I think that sort of inches them above Cincinnati, who I'm not expecting a lot from. And maybe even Houston, who I'm not expecting a lot from when it comes to sort of the final Big 12 standings. But like we said, we were all in consensus with all these teams being at the bottom. And I just thought, again, West Virginia arguably makes even less sense to be in the Big 12 now with these new teams. And I think my final note on these bottom few is every time I see Houston, I'm just saddened and ashamed. I know this is going to set Blake off, but there's no reason that Houston should have been added and SMU not. I mean, SMU at least has tradition. SMU has tradition and brings academics and brings money. Houston brings nothing to the conference. So, but that's why we're leaving.
No, at least Houston invested $250 million into their facilities, has a great basketball program, actually shows they give a damn, where SMU is now trying to backfill that, being oh, we're really late to the party. Now let's just try to throw money at this and hopefully solve it. It was the right decision to add Houston, even though I don't think Houston fans really exist.
Yeah, they're just commuter. They're commuter fans for sure. All right, so I will say, Blake, myself, and Jameson all we're in consensus on our 4th, and you can bet on it. It's Iowa State, folks. We have Iowa State 4th out, but Ty has them as his 10th team. Ty, why are you why was Iowa State, in your opinion, excluded from this pit of
I feel like Iowa State, just on coaching and everything, they have the potential to win those close games. I understand, had the worst record the past 2 years in picking games when it comes to the weekend spread, but I like what Iowa State does in close games. I still think they're not the team that they were a few years ago, but I still think they're that team that's going to do a lot of little stuff well, even if the players aren't that amazing and even if the expectations aren't that great. My thought process here is the same as my West Virginia not being dead last. On paper, they should be worse, but I think those intangibles, I think that sort of team spirit and that atmosphere that their coaching staff and everyone else brings will probably carry the day if they get into those close game situations. So I think that just sort of inches them out of the bottom 4 in my book.
Yeah, I get that. I just think everything going on with the controversy of the gambling controversy sinks them. Their starting quarterback, there's no way he plays another game in college football. Starting running back, also just done. Iowa State is a ship on fire right now. They weren't very good last year. And I mean, this year, just the amount of disaster around them. I wouldn't touch this team with a 10.5-foot pole.
Is there any news out? Like, is Hunter Dekkers going to be eligible to play? I understand that video came out, but I don't know how damning that is. I guess we need to bring in our legal expert on the case.
Or I think this is now outside of the NCAA. This is could actually be this could actually be federal or not federal charges, but actual criminal charges against them if they're betting on their own games that they're playing in.
Yeah, but what about the Hunter Dekkers specific thing of him being a big old dingus drunk?
Yeah, he's just an idiot. He's just an idiot. The best part of the video is
I will say he's not that dumb, right? He reminded them that it was illegal and not to save the video.
And then proceed to say, "Don't show that to anybody" at the end of the video, which just seals it shut.
Is that the knowledge? Also, the knowledge that she was an Iowa fan. She's a rival fan. What are you doing?
It explains the past. It explains the last year with Iowa State, a competent defense. As y'all remember on the weekend spread last year, I was beating the drum that Iowa State wasn't that bad because in advanced metrics, they really weren't. Their defense was incredible, but their offense stinks. And if they don't have 2 of their players that were I don't even think great players, but ones they were going to rely on heavily, I'm not with Ty on this one, but I'm glad somebody's carrying that water this year that Iowa State really isn't that bad.
I think Ty,
to be clear, I think the bottom 5 teams in the Big 12, there is very little separating them in my book. It's sort of you're trying to build a sandcastle out of mud here. They're all going to sink to the same level of muck, I think, but eventually something's sort of going to be on top, just barely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It looks like Hunter Dekkers has pled not guilty, and he has not left the program yet, like some of his other teammates that are getting charged with this. There's no final, punishment yet. Can we have a Hunter Dekkers return? I am cheering for it so hard just to see him come back and get absolutely clowned. Iowa State, like I said, with our good old friend PJ Fleck, it's just all these funny stories that came out this offseason. It's so easy to cheer against them, and I will be cheering against Iowa State for this whole season.
Yeah, I will say Iowa State seems like a team that won't be very good, but will sneak up and bite teams randomly. Ames is obviously a really tricky place to play, and I don't know. They have a lot of those weird upset potential games at home. So we'll see how that goes. But let's talk about the team that Ty has in his final, just flunked for. He went with the Kansas Jayhawks. Not included. And because of that, let's reveal where everyone has Kansas on their list. Blake has the Jayhawks in 10th. Jameson has them in 9. And look, I'm optimistic about my guy Lance Leipold. I have KU in 7th. I have KU in 7th.
Bobby's a sucker for those storylines and that momentum. He just loves it.
They get better every single year, and I know that's a lot.
What's the reference range here? Their reference range has been nothing. Of course, they're getting better. There's only so much you can go down.
They were 6 and 7 last year. Obviously, a rocky end on the back end, but look, I think Leipold and those guys have something going here. I think there's actual momentum in Kansas for the first time in forever.
I agree. Like, okay, the good thing about Kansas is Lance Leipold, obviously great offensive coach. Like, whenever we saw Jason Bean come in, although he was no Jalen Daniels, he was still one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the Big 12 last year. So we know that system is going to score points. And if Jalen Daniels stays healthy, I think they will do very well. They can go 6-6 and make a bowl game. But the big but is like if Jalen Daniels goes down, that team is screwed. Their defense sucks, and I don't think it's getting much better.
Defense.
Like horrible. Like we saw it at the end of last season. Like after Jalen Daniels went down, they were not in games. They were getting blown out. They were probably fortunate that they had a softer schedule on the front, with some hype that like got the team rallied behind them. That defense is so bad. When all these Big 12 teams really are solid on both sides of the ball, I just don't think their offense is that unworldly that it like boosts them up over a lot of these Big 12 schools. So 10 is where they're staying for me.
Yeah, it really comes down to the defense with Kansas. Like Jalen Daniels, I think he's very talented, and the way that he played last year is for real. Obviously, the injury really did kind of bog him down a little bit, and obviously Lance Leipold did do a really good offensive scheme to get receivers open, and you could tell a lot of that success in that Kansas offense was the play calling. But it's a huge but. You can't be a one-sided team in college football. I think that their hype was so caught the league so off guard that it kind of evened out at the end of the season, like Blake said. And I'm just really curious to see how many teams are going to take Kansas legitimately serious now whenever they come into town. I know whenever they see Jalen Daniels is one of the more, obviously not counting the Texas people, like one of the more hyped up quarterbacks in the Big 12, people are going to actually take that as a challenge now when it comes down to their defense. And before that, I guarantee you a lot of these defenses were like, it's Kansas. I'm chilling this whole week. And I went to the bars Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, no, and I get that. I feel like they have a pretty favorable schedule at home too. I feel like getting BYU, UCF in, they play some kind of light teams on the road, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and a couple home games where it's like, yeah, I could see that getting interesting. Like they play Tech at home. I could see them getting weird and winning that game. So for me, I have them at 7. I know it's optimistic, but
Well, I mean, I wasn't expecting anything less from you, Bobby. We all knew this.
Yeah, we all knew you.
I'm proud of the 7 because I thought it could have gone as high as 6 or 5. Whenever I was looking at it,
I got some spice on this list, man. Y'all are gonna.
Oh no! I know Bobby was smoking something today before making this list. He loves to cook his random takes.
I do want to say on Kansas, Bobby touched on their schedule. I was not going to break into let's look at the schedule this early, but I look at Kansas's Big 12 schedule. I think they have a very favorable out of conference schedule. I think Kansas, arguably, we're looking at bowl eligible Kansas at the end of the year. But when I look at their Big 12 schedule, I don't think whether it's home or away, I can't confidently say they're going to beat UCF or any of these other Texas Tech. I think that's an absurd take, Bobby, to say that Kansas might win that one. But BYU, I don't know. We'll get into BYU here soon. But other than that, maybe they can beat Iowa State. Certainly they beat Cincinnati. But I look at this schedule and I'm looking at Kansas with maybe 3 wins. I'm pretty confident in saying 100% they'll have at least 2 conference wins. But I don't know. This is what I was talking about with these bottom teams. I mean, this is why they're in my bottom 4. I think maybe it goes down to a head-to-head between Iowa State and Kansas. I just don't see a whole lot of differentiation. Obviously, Kansas has the weapons to make things happen. They did in the past, but we'll see.
Yeah, it just makes me nervous when you get your easier games on the road for Kansas. I feel like they're hosting a lot of their heavy hitters on their schedule, and like OSU, Iowa State, Cincinnati on the road. That kind of scares me. Those are probably going to be your 3 that you're circling of like we can beat these teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Cincinnati is traveling for Cincinnati. I think is a big blow because that is one of the ones that I think realistically could be a win, but so late in the season too, you might be so beat up and.
Yeah, the bottom could fall out absolutely here. Kansas will steal games. They're going to have an upset or 2. That's just the way that they're they're made. But I think there's going to be some games where they're upset as well.
We'll see how it goes. Let's fill out the rest of our 10s. Jameson, you and I have the same team in 10th, the BYU Cougars. Now, Ty has them in 8th, and Blake also has them in 8th. So everyone's kind of likewise thinking here. Jameson, why are you low on the Cougars like myself?
See, the thing is, I didn't feel like I was too low with BYU. I mean, they have like a lot of people that they're losing, and Blake's favorite player that he likes to talk about is Puka Nacua being gone. And how much of a Keaton Slovis guy are you? I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think Blake just might be a bigger Keaton Slovis guy than
I think so. Like I really liked that move. I'm not gonna lie. He's an he's not a great quarterback, but he's an experienced college quarterback that I think at a BYU is going to be protected a little bit more on the line of scrimmage than Pitt last year. I felt like Pitt, he was just running around for his life the time like he did play. So I'm high on Keaton Slovis, and I'll let you continue on your BYU stuff though.
I just feel like BYU was really, really inconsistent last year. I mean, we saw them get like a pretty solid win against Baylor, but they got blown out against Liberty. They lost to Eastern Carolina at home. You lose to Arkansas at home by a pretty substantial margin. And then these other teams that they're playing, they didn't look that impressive. It wasn't like they're blowing, the random crappy independent teams that they usually play on their schedule. It wasn't like they're blowing them out. So to me, it's like, how are they going to handle that step up to the Big 12? I think they're going to. I think people think they'll do better because of their brand, but I just really don't see it this year. I think long term, I think BYU is a threat in the Big 12. This year, I just don't think they're there.
Yeah, and I get that. I feel probably of the 4 new teams, I feel most confident that a BYU this season in a sense of just like, I feel like there's a high floor there. They're a high floor program. They were an independent that was playing a lot of Power 5 schools before this. It was like a UCF, although like you could tell by my rankings, I'm probably going to be higher on UCF. Like they probably have more talent, but I think BYU is more suited and has dealt with P5 programs on a more consistent basis than these other 3 teams that came from the American. So I like Keaton Slovis. I think their defense was horrible last year. I think their new hire at defensive coordinator, supposedly he's like doing a guns a-blazing type of defense. Nothing safe. They're a mature team. I feel like all BYU teams are old. You've never found a young, inexperienced BYU team. So it's a high floor program that I have to rank. Like, although I don't see them in that next tier. I think they're definitely not gonna be in that bottom tier by the end.
Let it be known, I know why Blake's high on them. It's not Keaton Slovis. It's their running back is a transfer from UNLV.
He is, which is a wild move. Las Vegas, Provo, Utah.
Both cities founded by Mormons.
Hey, after this whole Utah stuff with them joining the Big 12, I've become more of a BYU fan than a Utah fan, which is something I would not have said last year. So, props to the Cougs.
Ty, your thoughts on the Cougs?
Yeah, so here's what I'm thinking about BYU. My first thought, and this will tie into Central Florida, like Blake kind of touched on as well. I feel like Blake and I might be sort of equal in the rankings, but BYU, I think the new teams, if they're not garbage tier like Houston, have an advantage of just no one has ever played this BYU team really within the Big 12. It's completely different. Like you said, it's a mature team. It's a weird place to travel to for people that have to go to BYU. And I almost think there's a sort of a house money situation with them coming in. I think there's going to be a ton of motivation on their end to do as well as they can right from the start. And I think there's going to be a novelty that plays into their hand a little bit. And then I look at their Big 12 schedule. I mean, they get Kansas, they get Cincinnati, they get West Virginia, they get Iowa State, they get Oklahoma State. They have to play OU, they have to play Texas, they have to play TCU, they have to play Texas Tech. But when I look at this Big 12 schedule, if I'm just looking at sort of a neutral baseline, like who do I think is top half, who do I think is bottom half, BYU I think has at least 60% of their schedule is bottom half. So I think there's just a higher chance for them to do something there. So I like BYU at 8. I mean, same as Blake, obviously not too highly up there, but I think like Blake said, I don't see BYU at the very bottom down in the mud tier. I don't think they're very high in the middle tier. I think maybe there's 4 tiers to the Big 12 this year, but I don't think that they are anywhere close to the very bottom. I think the team I have at number 9 could go mid-tier or they could go into the mud. BYU, I don't think, like Blake said, high floor. I don't see him going into the mud.
I honestly think they got kind of a tough schedule in a way. Yeah, they get West Virginia, but they have to go all the way over to Morgantown. That's a pretty brutal trip. Iowa State at home, that actually looks a lot better, but going on the road to Texas, going to TCU, even at KU, not great. At Oklahoma State, in Boone Pickens on senior night, they just kind of got a really crappy draw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'll say this about on the schedule, and I think Ty kind of iterated this. Yes, they have to play Texas and Oklahoma. They're going to think those are L's, but a lot of their other games, they're avoiding kind of like the rest of the pack. That's kind of like that they're avoiding Kansas State, which I think is a big thing. I think they're not playing UCF or Central Florida, as Ty calls them, right? So like they're still avoiding some of those games where it'd be like a little bit more dicey, closer lines. They might just get their L's with Texas and Oklahoma, but they can kind of work up and get higher in the standings to where they will be out of that bottom tier in terms of their spot.
I get that.
I also want to say this doesn't contribute to the Big 12, but week 3 they'll play Arkansas as well. So I think they're going to be coming into their conference schedule, even if that's a loss. They're gonna have that sort of first punch, and it's not going to daze them as much. Whether that's a win or a loss, they're going to play a hard football game before they get into conference play. There's some other teams that are have a pretty good out of conference opponent as well, but I think that plays into their hand here, even if they lose that one.
Fair enough. All right, let's move into a team that 3 of us put them at 9. And that's the Oklahoma State Cowboys. So me, Blake, Jameson, all have the Pokes at 9.
I have them at 8.
Jameson has them at 8. My bad. Yeah. So the Cowboys, obviously not great last year. Not a great offseason. Lost a lot in the transfer portal. Didn't get a ton back, if we're being honest. But guys, this schedule is just so light.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm looking at it, and I want Ty's opinion on this. You a big Alan Bowman guy? Because we're about to see it. I'm the iron lung, as we used to call him, with his collapsed lung. Man, here's my thing with Oklahoma State. I completely agree, Bobby. I was struggling with Oklahoma State, Kansas, and BYU in this little section. I think it could go either way with those. But my whole process of looking at it, I thought Oklahoma State's schedule was just a little bit more, conducive to them, getting to that point. So, let's just take a ride through Oklahoma State's schedule with me they go on the road to Iowa State in their first Big 12 game. I think that can be a good W for them. They get Kansas State at home. That's going to be tough. But, Kansas at home, West Virginia on the road, Cincinnati at home. Then they have Bedlam, UCF, Houston, BYU. I think that is a very favorable schedule. Whenever it comes down to it, I'm just not too worried about them coming out on top versus the BYU and Kansas, and that's why I have them at 8.
Blake?
The schedule's super easy, but they just have nobody left. This defense was they started out so hot last year. The defense wasn't great. Their hire they got, new innovative guy, but they didn't really add much on that side of the ball via the transfer portal, like Bobby said. Their offense last year, which was kind of keeping them afloat at the beginning of the season, loses their starting quarterback, loses their starting running back, and loses 4 of their top 5 receivers. They lost 2,000 yards of receiving via those 4 wide receivers. Like, it's insane how much they lost. And it's like, okay,
they still have their number 1 wide receiver, though, Blake.
That's fair, but you lose all your depth and you're really not gaining that much. And you're bringing in now Alan Bowman to right the ship. And I just feel like the levels of the Big 12s is rising when it comes to those just middle tier programs. Like, Kansas is no longer a doormat. We even talked about Iowa State, West Virginia, all them kind of being feisty, and we don't even know about the American teams. I just think Gundy's lost his fastball. he's really not meant for this new age of college football. And it's reminding me a lot of what Gary Patterson was doing at the end of his career. But at least like Gary Patterson was still bringing in like legitimate recruiting classes. OSU doesn't recruit very well. They don't seem to be developing all too well anymore. And on top of it, nobody transfers in there. So it's just kind of their lack of talent has caught up with the fact that they've been just so like they've been so good for so long at developing people, and now they've just lost that edge. And it's sad to see, but I think Gundy's probably on his way out soon.
Yeah, past 2 classes were in the 50s, so pretty tough. Ty, your thoughts on the Pokes?
Yeah, first off, on the Alan Bowman slander, OU would have been 8-4 with him last year, just to clarify. He is not a good quarterback, but we are not ones to throw stones. Completely lost my train of thought. Oh, Oklahoma State, super favorable schedule. I think this one is this is the first, like, I don't know team. I'm almost putting them up here just off of giving them the benefit of the doubt. I put them below BYU just because, like I said, I don't see a situation where BYU has a total collapse. I see a situation where they just drop a bunch of games, but they might be close games. I can see total collapse from this Oklahoma State team, even with a super easy schedule. That's really the only differentiator between 8 and 9 for me. Like we talked about, they lost a bunch of people. Spencer Sanders, I think, went to go play with his dad at Colorado, maybe. I don't know. That wasn't that good. That was not that good.
No.
It's just horrible.
Boo.
I completely lost. I mean, I'm excited to see him at Ole Miss. That'll be interesting. But yeah,
I do indeed know where he went in the transfer portal.
Yeah, seeing him ride on the bench at Ole Miss, that's what we're going to watch him doing. He's going to be holding up the little cards. He's going to be wearing the little hat, doing the hand signals with the vest. That's what he's going to be doing
Jackson
this
Dart.
year.
A little weirdly colored, like the hat that doesn't match any of the school's other branding, like a green hat or something like that with the Ole Miss logo on it. But yeah, I don't know. Super favorable schedule, but I think if they had a tougher schedule, they'd easily be bottom 4 for me. I don't know with this team. I don't think their ceiling is very high, I think is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I can see their floor being abysmal, but I don't see their ceiling being much higher than 7, best case scenario, just on head-to-heads because they have such an easy schedule. But yeah.
Here's the thing with them. They do not have depth, like Blake said, and that is going to make sure, like, everyone knows that their floor is going to be low because of their depth, but they still have some guys that are going to, make big plays and pop. Colin Clay, like, these are okay preps guys. These 3 guys are all okay preps, all Oklahoma. Colin Clay, preseason, all Big 12 kind of guy. He's dealt with injuries, but, he's been there for a long time, and he's, great edge rusher. Kendall Daniels played great as a freshman for them. Guy that we thought Oklahoma was going to get for a long time, goes to Oklahoma State, and looking pretty good that he went out there getting play early. He was, one of the best freshmen in the Big 12 that we played. And then Brendan Presley is just an electric playmaker. Alan Bowman can give him a couple bubble screens, and hopefully he can go out and make a play for himself. So understand the concern about Oklahoma State. But me ranking them 8 and y'all ranking them 9, I just don't think we have too much of a different of opinion. I think we're still in the same place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think we're far off. I think we have the same ideas about the Pokes for sure. All right, let's move on to our next team. And I'm going to be honest, up until now, we've been pretty lockstep with these teams. This one's all over the place. I have them 8th. Ty has them 5th. Jameson has them 6th. And Blake has them 7th. It's the Central Florida Gold.
There they are.
There we go.
So a very polarizing team for the board. Ty, I'll let you kick this one off. Why are you so high on Central Florida, the Centronauts?
Here's the thing. I'm just so excited for Blake to see 6 and 7. It's not, I don't even care that they're at 5. It's when he sees 6 and 7, we're going to have a time on this podcast. Look, I do have a serious explanation for this, though. I think Central Florida, more than any other team coming in, cares so deeply, whether they are, talent level there or not. I think they are going to bring 1,000% effort into every game. I like their schedule for the team that they are. I mean, looking at their Big 12 schedule, they have K-State. I think that's pretty easily a loss. Baylor, I think they can win that one. Kansas, I think that might be a sneaky, really fun game. I think Kansas, if they stay healthy into early October, which shouldn't be hard, that could be a cool shootout. I think they dropped the OU game, but who knows with this OU team. West Virginia, I think they got that one. Cincinnati, I think they got that one. Oklahoma State, I think they got that one. Texas Tech, we'll see with Tech, but that might have cool potential. And then Houston, I think they have that one. So they have a very easy schedule. And then like I talked about with BYU, although they're playing a lot of new people, there's that novelty, right? No one else has played this UCF team. UCF generally has sneaky talent in terms of guys who, whether they're developed or not, outperform their sort of star level and everything else. I really am high, not super high, obviously, mid of the road on these rankings, but I like this Central Florida team to be able to win close games, and I think that differentiates them here. This is a bit of a spicy take. I do understand this is a bit of a spicy take, but I like him at 5. I do want to say before someone else takes, my number 5 is sort of on the same tier as my number 8. I do want to clarify, like 5 through 8, I think are all in one tier, could go either way. So I don't think we're as mixed up as it maybe would seem.
I think there's a tier that breaks off at Oklahoma State, Kansas, and BYU, and it cuts into this 7, 6, 5 for me, I'd say.
Yep.
Central Florida, as we're going to continue to call them this year, because it seems like that just messes with them in their head instead of UCF. I don't know why.
That's your formal name, Jameson.
That's exactly right. The thing is, like, they have some really good returning guys, and here's the thing. I know some of y'all won't believe in John Reese Plumlee, but I like what he brings to the field, and I know Blake doesn't. I like John Reese Plumlee, and he did me well in the weekend spread last year in a couple of the games. I was happy with him. But the thing is, like, they've also got like a pretty good defensive returning team, and like also I think 2 of their top wide receivers are also returning as well for Plumlee and his targets. They got a first team all preseason Big 12 and Jason Johnson at the linebacker position, and then 3 other guys that are on the third team all Big 12 on their defense. So if Plumlee can take another step, I know Blake wants to say something about that. They at least have some talent on the back end of their defense where I think that they can differentiate themselves from teams like Oklahoma State, Kansas, and BYU.
John Reese Plumlee is kind of a bum. He can't really throw that much. All he does is run. He's just kind of like if you converted a safety to quarterback and threw him out like back there.
He's exactly like Anthony Richardson, who you love.
No,
He's exactly like Anthony Richardson, a bum quarterback from Florida.
Top 10 prospect. The NFL scouts see what I saw. I was on that one for the longest time. That shows the type of brain I have. Maybe the field I should go into after my current one, just because I recognize that talent early. But John Reese Plumlee, I can tell you can't throw. So Jameson's points about, the 2 best wide receivers are coming back. They're catching like 10 balls all season. This man can't throw. This man can't really play that much. They're going to be a one-dimensional team, but I think they have decent amount of talent on it to like keep them at the top of like that back tier, or not back tier, or this mid tier, whatever we're calling it. But yeah, they're just not going to be very good. I just think they're going to be all right. I think they're kind of in the BYU situation, high floor, but have a little bit more proven pieces. So I rank them a little bit higher. But yeah, I'm not as confident on John Reese Plumlee. God, he's just a 2-sport athlete guy. Doesn't really know how to throw. Doesn't really care about 2-sport athletes.
What's his other sport?
Baseball.
And he can't throw.
Oh, I want to see.
Just run in baseball.
I haven't paid attention to UCF baseball, but that man's probably has like a 8 ERA, 3 hit by pitches a game, because that man has accuracy. I've seen him throw football. So.
Also, John Reese Plumlee just sounds like a baseball guy name. Like, yeah, that makes sense. I think UCF just
he fit perfect. That's a perfect Ole Miss name.
He's an outfielder. He's not even a pitcher. Because I feel like a quarterback. If you're a quarterback and you're also a pitcher, like your arm would fall off.
Yeah, that was a reach of an analogy.
Jameis Winston was a pitcher.
Jameis Winston's a freak.
Yeah,
that's true. Not John Reese Plumlee.
In many ways,
should be John Reese Plumlee sounds like you don't know. John Reese Plumlee sounds like he should be on the Ole
Say it,
Miss
Bobby.
IM fields.
Say it. Oh.
Yeah, it ain't that bad.
I thought you were going to make a Jameis Winston analogy.
No. We don't need to. We don't need to
Winston's
get into
cooking
that.
right now on NFL Network, but keep on watching us. Don't
Cooking
change
crab
it.
legs.
All right, we got to move
is.
on from that.
Original jokes.
Hey, definitely not. Yeah, that definitely isn't a 10-year-old joke. All right, let's move on to another one. This is kind of another varied one, and it's gonna be this one. This one might elicit some responses. We got the Baylor Bears.
Oh yes. So
I'm high on Baylor. I got him 5. Ty has him at 7. Jameson has him at 7. Blake also has him at 5. So a little bit of a split decision here. Blake, as a Baylor alum, what are your thoughts on the Bears at 5?
Yeah, I think I still love Dave Aranda so much. I think he's one of the best football coaches because he's the only football coach that really is introspective. Besides maybe your Sabins, mid 2010s, Dave Aranda gets it. He gets what he's not good at and immediately goes out and finds solutions for that. I think last year, he was very honest. He was like, we weren't physical enough. I didn't do a great job in the portal. Didn't go get enough guys. I feel like they got enough guys this year where if Blake Shapen's just a decent quarterback, Richard Reese is probably the best running back. The best running back in the Big 12 this year. I think they have good coaches to build line play. That's their weak point. I think offensive line is definitely their weakest point, but the BYU guys and Grimes and I can't remember the other guy's name always built consistent lines at BYU. They brought in 2 of the BYU brothers to come in to fill some of those spots. So the reloading in those key spots, and I just feel like this team was really a lot better than the record said last year. I just think Baylor goes through this. They go through these high highs, immediately dip down, and then shoot back up. They've had the most tumultuous last 10 or 15 years if you look at their records. They can't seem to string together 2 good seasons together. I think it's a rebound year. It's a rebound year. I don't see how you would think a UCF that's a one-dimensional. You know what you're going to get with UCF. I don't get how you could ever put them in front of a Baylor, which has, I think, potential upside. Could be your Techs, even a TCU. They can start punching in that 3-4 range. So yeah. That's why I have them as high as 5.
I had them flip-flopping between 4 and 5 myself. I'm pretty high on the Bears to bounce back. I like Aranda. I'm not going to go into it because I think Blake, you kind of nailed it on the head. He's a guy who is super critical on himself, doesn't have a big ego, and knows how to fix things. And I feel like Baylor bounces back. Schedule seems solid to me. Obviously a pretty tough non-conference having Utah come into town. But no, I think Big 12 wise, this Baylor team will surprise folks. Pretty brutal end of the season last year, running into Texas, Kansas State, and TCU back to back. I think, I think they're poised for a bounce back year, and we'll sit around 5.
And it's going to be a bad year whenever they lose to Texas State at home in their first.
No,
the mighty Boca.
That Texas, as Bobby and I covered, that Texas State team is going to be bad. They're going to be very, very bad.
No, that's good. That's good though, because that means we could get some Texas State plus 30 action on the
some
weekends.
value.
I'm going to be eating that porridge even though it's going to be hot. I'm going to take it down. Here's my thing with Baylor. I like Baylor as well, and it sucks. Whenever you see 7 and y'all have 5, it's oh, that's a big jump compared to y'all. My thing was I'm kind of thinking about UCF and Baylor and who would I get the head-to-head win there. I think this could be a tiebreaker situation. UCF plays them at home. So I just have UCF winning that home game over Baylor, and that's why I picked UCF over Baylor in this situation. I think Baylor will succeed this year, and I think they kind of saw it this last year as well, but they didn't do it as much as I wanted them to. Is stop trying to make Shapen this guy that they thought he was 2 years ago. I just don't think he's really shown a lot to where he can be an alpha quarterback that the Big 12 is shown to be. Where it's going to come down to is the run game. Reese is a hell of a running back. He is. He's not probably the best running back in the Big 12. He is. And then, get Dominic Richardson as well coming over there. TCU, big L there, losing Dominic Richardson, by the way, Blake. But they don't have Squirrel anymore, which is kind of sad. But still, like they just need to like run the ball down people's throats and win their games like that. And, losing Siaki Ika is going to be a big thing, but, their defense will always be like good to moderate with a Randek coach. I'm just not a Shapen believer to where I think he go on the road and win against the UCF, establishing that tiebreaker in terms of the standings in the Big 12.
Oh, but you feel confident that John Reese Plumlee will beat teams down the stretch in key and critical moments when he has to pass.
Yeah, he's going to go up 28-0 in the first quarter because he's an absolute flamethrower is what he is.
This is where storylines start for the full season, folks. I love it. Ty, what are your thoughts? Because you're also kind of lowish.
I can say this. So one, like I said before, my 5 through 8, really 5 through 7, I could go anyway. I went spicy, putting UCF up here super high. I would not disagree whatsoever with what I'm presuming Blake's rankings to be, 5 through 7. I could see UCF being a firm number 7. I just wanted to go a little spicy. When it comes to Baylor, look, arguably, I think my argument for Baylor at 7 is the same as Blake's argument for Baylor at 5, and I couldn't have said it any better than Blake. Baylor is going to rely on their running attack, and the weakest part of their team is their offensive line. How does that make sense? That's who I have.
YouTube, you just got a great gift right there. Bobby with the no-look handoff for the beer.
I was summoning it.
Bobby running the trick play in the background.
See, this is why you need to subscribe to our YouTube. We have these amazing graphics that Bobby's putting on right now, tracking our rankings, and then you get to see things like Bobby. Bobby has at least 5 hilarious moments that you don't get to hear or see during a podcast.
Like the time I sprinted to the bathroom during the March Madness pod. That was
exactly. Great. See, you don't get those kind of stuff. So we're almost to 500 subs. I know this is the middle of the pod, kind of little. You usually do this at the end, but help us out. It's almost a season. Get us to 500. We can monetize some content and get us some Schooner Pod bucks, some Schooner coin.
Yeah, we've been dry since old TPP and croaked. So definitely looking forward to monetizing again. Just keep subscribing, folks. We love it. We've had a really good push towards the season. So let's just get over the line, get this thing done. Any final thoughts on Baylor? Or should we move on to our next team?
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's do it. Okay, so this next team, I have them at 6. Ty has them at 6. Jameson has them at 5. And Blake has them at 3. Take a guess.
Oh, you mother!
No! There it is.
No.
He knew when he heard 3.
The Frogs. 13-2 last year, 10-4-1 against the spread. Over under set at 7.5 for TCU. And yeah, obviously we're a little bit lower on them than the captain. Bowden Blake loves his Frogs this year. And Blake, I'm just gonna let you go off because I can tell you're a foeman and a frothin.
This is a little ridiculous, and I feel like this started with Bobby's narratives of, oh, you lost all these people. We were losing like second string tight ends and stuff like that, and yet like it's still counting against our
draft picks?
production. Okay, no, let me stop it, Bobby. We return basically all of our defense. We lose THT and we lose the linebacker, but we're all back, experienced. And if you watch that TCU team at the end of the year,
defense was key in the national championship game.
It was, that we don't talk about that, but our defense is a bend don't break. It was key in that Michigan game. It was key at the end of the season, made the plays when it needed to. And we saw in the Big 12, they really they got better as the season went on and got used to Joe Gillespie's system. We saw it in that Texas game when we were holding to Texas. I don't even think to an offensive touchdown in that game. That defense was pretty solid by Big 12 standards by the end. We're returning mostly everybody on that side of the ball. And then you go to the offensive side. We lose 2 key, I admit 2 key linemen, quarterback, running back, 2 running backs, and our top wide receiver.
Yeah.
But we got some freaks coming back. We got some freaks. Our running back room, it's going to be running back by committee. We got the Alabama guy that got in a car wreck and hasn't
Trey
played
Sanders,
and
right?
like
Great start.
hasn't played
Great
in like 2
start.
or 3 years. But I think running back room is going to be solid. Chandler Morris was the guy who won the starting position last year. The only reason why he didn't was just Max Duggan came out like a man on fire whenever he got the chance, and like you can't relinquish in that that situation. But who knows? Like Chandler Morris could be better than Max Duggan. Could have a better season. He was the one that was supposed to start for us all last year. We see his highs of high whenever we beat Baylor and took him out of the playoff race 2 years ago. Chandler Morris is the truth. He's a really he's going to be a really, really good quarterback. And you combine that with the wide receiver room. Savion Williams comes back, who is just an absolute freak. Didn't get enough attention just because we had Darius Davis, Tay Barber, Quentin Johnston in there, but he's going to have his time to shine. Plus, we got 2 or 3 guys from the portal that are
JoJo Earl from Alabama, the
Yeah,
Alito
we
kid
got-
that OU is big in on recruiting.
Yep. And so big, I like him. And then was it John Paul Richardson from OSU, little guy in the slot, going to be good for us. I understand the hesitancy with losing so much on the offensive side of the ball, but I think Sonny Dykes is putting on a clinic of how you keep a consistent football program at a small school whenever you're not recruiting these blue chip talents. I think he used the portal perfectly, reloading the offensive side of the ball. We got Brockmeyer, he's the number 1 guy in Dallas, went to Alabama, tackle, like he's coming home, like he's going to use the portal well. Kendall Briles, I'm not so sure on that, but at least has the similar philosophy as Garrett Riley, where he's air raid principles, but is willing to run the ball when they're not stacking the box. And I love that because I feel like that was the difference maker last year for TCU, was when they relied on Kendre Miller, when they relied on DeMarcado. So I am super excited about this team. I think it's like total wild card, total unknown. Blasphemy is mostly Ty. Like I could understand. I don't really get Bobby behind Baylor just because I think TCU has a significantly higher ceiling than Baylor.
Bobby and I have them ranked equally.
No, but you putting UCF in front of it makes absolutely no sense. Like that is the ultimate you don't know ball that you take TCU and Baylor.
Last time I heard you don't know ball, something happened really poor to you. And San Diego State went all the way to the national.
They did not win. They did not win. I told you that.
Different
They
sport.
said they wouldn't make it out of the first round, Blake.
I said they would not win. They did not win. They lost in the national championship.
No, you said
they
first
didn't win the
round.
championship either. And what happened? They still made it all that way.
I knew it. I was never uncomfortable, was never in doubt that they were going to lose in March Madness. I felt very comfortable about that fact. But yeah, Ty just showing how little he knows ball right now. 2 teams with higher ceilings behind UCF, which has the floor is the ceiling for UCF. They're going to be a pain in some people's asses, but they're really not going to do all too much. I don't get how a TCU, although unknown, the floor is not going to fall out. The floor is raising, the ceiling is raising every single year, and I think this is going to be a pivotal time to show that TCU is going to be the premier program when it comes to the new Big 12 this year. So I'm excited for the season. I think they're going to do fantastic. I have them at 3. I would put them at 2 if the number 2 team didn't have the softest schedule in the whole entire world. That is unfortunate. Like TCU has to play a difficult schedule, but it's going to win a lot of games on that schedule. They're going to be proven. They're going to be tested. The team at number 2, they're not going to be tested at all. They're playing like the little ladies of the poor on on Saturday mornings. Like I don't get how they got such an easy schedule, but yeah, I think TCU is a top tier Big 12 school, even with all the talent. The talent loss is talent loss. We reload. We use the portal correctly, so I'm excited. It's Chan God season, Bobby.
I love it. I first of all, thank you for the deep dive and the optimist view of the TCU Horned Frogs. It's certainly the best you'll hear of any OU podcast out there. Great deep dive. And here's my thing. I could see TCU being really good and making that jump to 3. And I think overall as a program, they're going to be very, very strong. My thing is it's just a lot of guys to replace on a team that, while they were very good, they won a lot of really, really close games. They won a lot of narrow games, and you have to think that some of those are going to flip the other way.
Sounds like they're well coached.
I think that
never freak out. They never back down in those close moments, Bobby. Remember that Baylor game? They were out of it according to all the statistics and came back and won it.
I know you were texting us. It's all over and over again. You were down bad. I remember it, and I think that's my thing. I think TCU will be pretty good, like long term. I'm just kind of baiting them a little bit this season. It's just a lot of production loss. I could see them bouncing back, but to me, I kind of have them at 6 with this pretty tough schedule. You know, going on the road to Kansas State, going on the road to Oklahoma. They just kind of had a really bad draw. And you know, I think your point about schedules is important and true, because this is a ranking prediction, not really like which teams are better stacked up 1-to-1. I think just TCU just kind of got a bad end of the stick, and that adds to it, as well as the program loss. We'll see what happens with Sonny Dykes if he can come in fully refresh. Obviously, a lot of optimism. Love the 5 stars. Love the Bama guys. But man, we'll see. We'll see. I just kind of have them where I do, because I'm a little sus right now. Jameson?
Yeah. Here's my thing with the Frogs. I do share some optimism here, and I think 5 is right in that same spot. It comes down to, are they going to be better than Texas Tech this year, Blake?
Yes. I've been thinking about this. I might have to put a Malort bet on this just to like really solidify how much I feel, because I've been hearing all these talking heads talking up Texas Tech. Everybody's taking a little Texas Tech 11-1 to win the Big 12. I'm willing to take on that heat this year. We can get to it in a second, but yes, a potential Malort bet is there for sure.
It's already slated as a night game in Lubbock. TCU comes to town November 2nd.
Yeah, it's a Thursday, though. There's going to be no fans there because their fans don't travel to their home games. It's a Thursday night game, so
there'll be all of
I don't know.
Everyone in the Panhandle will be there, Blake. They'll be rowdy, and
I heard
we all know they don't go to school.
Really buying into this new program Texas Tech is putting forth. There is a hype. I can just sense this feeling amongst Texas Tech right now. But we're talking about TCU. Let me say a couple quick things about TCU, then we'll talk about Texas Tech here shortly. I agree with Blake. I think they've got some fun transfers, but you know, teams don't have, whenever they have just a bunch of turnover, even if they have like really, you know, good, talented players coming through, all of that turnover on the stars that they're losing is going to really hurt. Like whenever you are in a tough pickle and you're in a close game, yes, you rely on your coaching, Blake, but also your stars go out and make plays. You know, how many times did Quentin Johnson go out and make a huge play? Max Duggan ran the ball and he could barely even breathe. He made big plays for that TCU program. Kendre Miller, you know, DeMarcado, those are guys that they leaned on and made huge, huge plays for them. You know, yes, the transfer players will have talent, but how many of these guys is like, I know TCU is going to be leaning on them this year. I agree that you didn't lose too much, but I think, you know, Hodgins Tomlinson and D Winters as well, losing as well, and then Dylan Horton are going to be big losses for you. I think Johnny
Hodges though is next up, baby. Like our linebacking core. I'm not worried about our linebacking core.
But D Winters, you guys will miss D Winters.
Yeah, D Winters was good, but out of all the spots on the defensive side of the ball, it's the spot I'm least worried about. I know that the linebacking core is going to still be solid.
Yeah.
I know that the secondary is going to be incredible. And then with Josh Newton, like we have a guy from Florida competing for like the 3rd spot on there. We have a good secondary, defensive line a little bit worried about, but that was kind of last year as well. So
yeah, what I'm trying to get at, my overall theme that I've said, and I'm going to say it again, is that the stars that they've lost, it's going to be tough for them in close games to lean on guys that they just have their first year as a TCU Horned Frog.
And I think that's a really good point too. And I'll kick it to Ty on the Frogs here in just a quick moment. But, you know, even though Sonny Dykes was new, those guys had been together for years. The chemistry was there. It was a solid stand-up program that Gary Patterson built that got a little bit old.
Did you see the final 2 years, Bobby. Those were trash. What are you talking about? They were together. You're acting like they're winning 8-9 games
I'm
a
saying
year.
they're solid. They're still together though, you know. And my thing is, it just took. He did a great job of taking that group, putting them to a next level that Gary never got them to because he was lackadaisical because whatever Gary was doing wasn't working. He brought fresh blood in, and to me, like that unit just it'll take some time to get that chemistry back together. So we'll see how it goes. Honestly, I think that's a bigger loss than you're kind of accounting for. Anyways, Ty, I really want to hear your thoughts on the Frogs because obviously you have close UCF.
No, I think I agree. So again, I was being a bit spicy on my UCF take. It wasn't a troll take though. Like I stand behind my take so far. But I agree with everything that everyone has said about this TCU team. I agree very much so with the things that Blake has said about this TCU team. I mean, I think they are, without a doubt, they could fumble it, but I think, in my opinion, they're without a doubt the best positioned team for what this new Big 12 is becoming, especially with the power vacuum and the way that they're trending. And I think this is going to be a spicy take. Blake is going to be offended by this take. But I like to think of this take as trolling the other schools mentioned as much as it's a compliment to TCU. TCU is a fairly small private school. I could see TCU being like the Miami of the new Big 12, like what Miami thinks they are, like a private school that can perform really, really well with their football program, can fund it at a fairly high level, can get buy-in from a locale. I think Dallas-Fort Worth, there's tremendous local team buy-in potential if TCU plays their cards right, and they can still maintain, their academic standards and everything else. I think TCU has a ton of potential to be really, really well positioned. I think I could make a USC comparison as well, but USC is just a massive, massive school, like literally twice the size of OU. So, hard to make a comparison there, but I just don't, like you guys touched on, they won a lot of close games last year, and I think Blake is sort of undervaluing how key their players were in winning those games. I think TCU is not going to be bad. I mean, I see them doing really well, but it's just when they have to play Texas, when they have to play OU, when they have to play Texas Tech, even if they have to play Kansas State, when I start to look at this schedule, I think, yeah, even if they can sweep through the bottom ones, they have to play everyone that's expected to be at the top. So they can't really fake their way in. Like there's some teams in the Big 12, as we dive into these schedules a little bit more, who don't have to play all the top teams. So even if they would have lost to those teams, there's that question mark that might carry them into the Big 12 championship game potentially in some weird scenarios. TCU just doesn't have that. They have to face the music with everyone that's expected to be better than them. And if they drop those, they're going to end up 4, 5, 6, maybe more like 4, but we'll see.
Man, Ty, you nailed it there. Honestly, because when you really think about it, I while you're mentioning, I was like looking at my rankings. I'm like, yeah, they kind of go through everybody tough.
Everybody at the end of the schedule too. Like TCU probably is going to start 5 or 6-0 before they get to the meat of their schedule.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
it's gonna be a tale of two. I mean, I think TCU could perform really, really well. TCU could be what would it be, 10-2 at the end of the season? That wouldn't shock me either. But it's very much cupcake, and then all of a sudden here it comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say underrated.
Yeah, unless the funniest thing of all time happens and Colorado beats them, and then Colorado finishes with one win and it's over TCU, would actually be the funniest thing of all time.
Man, I will guarantee that game. There is no way Colorado beats TCU. Absolutely no way. After seeing that practice film, after seeing how the Shedeur Sanders 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, I want to play that defense. I want to play that defense in that nice, steamy 105-degree heat that I know will be at that 11 a.m. game. I'm ready for it because they are definitely not. I was just up in Colorado this last week. It's nice there. 60s. Cool, no humidity. Yeah, they haven't dealt with these conditions. You can't replicate how bad the summer has been.
That's fair. That's fair. I will say Sean C in the comments is absolutely going off. First of all, to make things easier, he did say John Reese probably will be working the drive-thru at Dairy Queen in 2 years. So he gave you that one, Blake. But then
Give me that one. But I'm reading these comments and they are scathing. They are scathing.
Prime is gonna or Prime is gonna squash TCU with his 9 toes like a grape. 9-2. Take the nickels, kernels, and the points. Coach Prime is going to smoke these frogs like Mitch McGarry did his entire career. Which I didn't know. I didn't know Mitch McGarry was smoking frogs, but honestly, that sounds like something he would do.
Yeah, but yeah, I will guarantee the Colorado win. When you see that opening spread, it's going to be in the 20s, like in the 20s. People are going to be like, "What? I thought this was big noon. Colorado's supposed to be good." No,
wrong.
Oh. This is when the media members and the media companies come together and just put something on for ratings. This is exactly that game because know Fox, ESPN, they want those early Colorado games because nobody's going to be watching Dion when he's 2-9 fighting at the end of the season for that last win. So
incredible. All right, so let's move on to our next one. I have them at 4. Jameson has them at 4. Blake has them at 6, and Ty has them at 3. It's the Texas Tech Red Raiders. 8-5 last year, 8-5 against the spread as well. Their win total this year sits at 7.5. Ty, but Blake, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna let you just seethe on this one for a while. You're going last. You're gonna have to sit through this. Ty, kick us off. Why are you so high on the Raiders?
Here's the thing. Texas Tech, they don't even have to play anyone, really. If you look at their Big 12 schedule. I mean, they have a decent, they play Oregon. Oregon has to come to them. But, their Big 12 schedule, West Virginia, Houston, Baylor, all bums. K-State, I think it may be a toss-up. Honestly, my Texas Tech placement is more of an anti-K-State take. We all know where this is going, right? There's no hiding that K-State is my number 4 at this point. BYU, I think they get BYU. TCU, I think they get TCU. Kansas, I think they get Kansas. I think they beat UCF. And then they have to go to Texas. They lose that one. But I could see this Texas Tech team, realistically, they have one Big 12 game that I think they're going to lose. And then they have one that they should lose but could very well win, which is K-State. And then the rest, I think they should win. Some are going to be harder than others. And I'm not trying to get Blake riled up on TCU again, but I think that Texas Tech is currently trending upwards with the way this Big 12 is going. I don't think they're at the same level as the 1 and 2 teams that I think we're all about to dive into, unless Blake has someone really funny at number 4, which I think he might, which would be amazing for this podcast. But I think, they were 8-5 last year, but they were truly 8-5. Like there was no fluke games in there. Like they won all of those games by winning them. That's a just terrible way to articulate that. But they went out and won all those games. There wasn't any sort of fluke in there. And I believe that this team might not even be that much better than last year. But think again about the parity within the Big 12 last year. I think some of these teams are going to be taking steps back, or are going to have things mixed up with this new schedule, with all these extra teams, and so much more potential for people to eat each other. And I think this Texas Tech team can produce the same quality of product that they produced last year and end up at 3. Could also be 4, could also be 5, could also be 6. But I wanted to go a little spicy with this. I think this is their absolute ceiling. Same with my UCF. I'm putting them at their absolute ceiling when I've not done that for other teams. But I think that there's potential here.
And I'm with you. I think my 6 through 4, I think pretty interchangeable. I just went with Texas Tech because I like their schedule the best of those 3. Don't have to face OU, obviously massive, avoiding the Sooners there. I think Tech just kind of is a program on the rise. I think Joey McGuire has something going there. And to me, I think those 3 are very interchangeable, but I'm just going to give the edge to the Texas Tech Red Raiders here. Jameson, your thoughts?
Yeah, it comes down to the Texas Tech versus TCU game. Who's going to win that one and get the tiebreaker here? And Texas Tech at home on that Thursday night. Like Blake said, I think that's going to be a game full of energy and it's going to be a lot of fun. and Texas Tech comes out with a win and gets that 4th spot. And here's the thing with Texas Tech. I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, they had a lot of momentum last year, but they also lost, stars last year. And they're like, oh, look, they lost Tyree Wilson, one of the top players in their, in the NFL draft. Tyree Wilson was also hurt for a lot of the season last year. And I don't think Tyree Wilson was more of like a huge difference maker in terms of college football, like some other top NFL draft picks. He was a person that people looked at him like, this guy has so many great tools. He's just got to put it together. He could be a dominant pass rusher in the NFL. And that's why he went so high. So I feel like people will say like they did lose more than they actually did. I still believe that, having a guy like Taj Brooks as their running back coming back, who's been there forever. Tyler Shaw, who I'm not the hugest fan of, but they were one of the better offenses in the Big 12 last year in terms of just yards per game, So like having a seasoned veteran who's played 5 seasons of college football at quarterback, obviously is going to be a big deal. I think that they are not a number 3 team. I think there's a clear cutoff when it goes between, I'd say my cutoff is 4 and 5 are in my little TCU and Texas Tech in their own little kind of tier here. But I'll give Texas Tech the head-to-head opportunity to get the 4 spot over the 5 from TCU.
All right, Blake, let her rip. Tell us why Cactus Gang is overhyped.
I think y'all just forget basic history sometimes, that we've seen a lot of hyped Texas Tech squads, and none of them have ever reached their expectations. Last year was a really good year, honestly, in their eyes, and that's saying something. That should send red flags that you're like, oh, they're going to outperform this. What are we talking about here? We talked about earlier on in this podcast that you can't win in this league if you're one-dimensional, like a Kansas. Tech is just a slightly better Kansas in that sense. They're very one-dimensional, they're very good on offense, and they suck on defense. Jameson touched on some of the defensive departures. Where is that going to get better? They're not going to get better on the defensive side of the ball. They're still going to be probably utter trash, and that leaves you to Tyler Shuck's health, which I haven't seen that man play a full season in my entire life. I know he's going on 4 or 5 years in college football, but damn, that man has never played like a full season, it seems like. All the Tech fans love to highlight when Shuck was playing. Yes, that's the key. When Shuck was playing, he's never playing. This team is so overhyped this year, and they've gotten so much steam in the betting market to win the Big 12 too, just because of their long odds, but I'll give a compliment here to McGuire. Like, he's really good on 4th downs. He makes really good, statistically right decisions on 4th downs. And that was really pivotal last year in some of their wins, like Texas. They won that game because of their aggressiveness on 4th down, but they were converting those at like all-time high rates. Like, that is eventually going to go down. Like, even though you make the right decision in that moment, that doesn't guarantee you to get that 1st down. I think Texas Tech last year, they overperformed a little bit on that side of things analytically. They didn't gain much on defense. They returned their same offense. I just don't see how they make that next leap. I saw that Baylor game when they came in at home and just destroyed them. Like, destroyed them on Patrick Mahomes' night. I do not see the Texas Tech hype this year. I don't. I know this program is trending in, I guess, the right direction, but history is telling me everything opposite of that. They've had good talent before. They've had good teams and just never can seem to put it together, because that's what Tech is. Tech is an 8-4 at best team. That is really what their ceiling is. And I'm not going to put a team that is at best 8-4 in my eyes to plummet them to shoot them to the top of the Big 12. Their schedule, although they avoid OU, they still play some of the heavy hitters. They still got to play TCU. They still got to play K-State, and they got to play at Texas. And I think that is critical. Critical, especially in a non-conference that I think is going to beat them up a little bit. We talked on the G5 podcast. I don't think Wyoming's are slumps this year. Like, I think Texas Tech is going to win that game, but I'm taking Wyoming whenever we put that on the weekend spread this year. If not a wild card, I'm taking them with the points, because that Wyoming team's solid. That Oregon team is really, really good. I think they get beat up early on. I just don't see how they improve from last year. Last year, they statistically overshot everything that they're supposed to do. Why are they going to replicate that in the same season with less on the defensive side of the ball and kind of the same on the offensive side of the ball? I just don't see it. I don't see the Texas Tech hype. I'm rating them, I think, fairly properly. Like, I think it might be a little controversial to put them in front of Baylor. I just see a little bit higher ceiling there. I just don't, with all this hype after an 8-5 season. I just don't see where this is going. I really don't. I don't see how they're top 4 in the Big 12 at all this year. I don't. I just don't.
No biases here.
Yeah,
No biases.
I also don't see them as top 4 in the Big 12, Blake, to be fair.
God, everybody's just drinking the Kool-Aid, drinking the clips of, oh, it runs through Lubbock. He was saying that last year when everybody was running them into the ground to their like little 8-4 or so what is it, 9-4 season because they won their bowl game. Big whoop.
8-5.
8-5. Oh, 8-5. Perfect. I don't get where the hype is. I just don't get it. I don't get how you see any sort of ceiling with this team. I don't.
Okay, that's fine. We'll see how it goes. I think the schedule sets up pretty all right. But
all right.
Okay, Blake, we'll move on. All right. So next team, Ty and Blake have him 4th. Jameson has him 3rd.
Oh, it's OU.
And folks, it's a tradition unlike any other. I overrate Kansas State once again. Have them winning the Big 12.
Oh, Bobby.
The Kansas State Wildcats, folks. Wild moves here. 10-4 last season.
This is worse than my UCF
against the spread. They're an 8-5 win total. Did I do this for the memes? Maybe a little bit. Did I do this because Kansas State fans flocked to our channel this summer? Maybe a little bit. But you know what? Here's my thing. They returned so much production on the offensive line. They returned Will Howard. Obviously, the loss of Deuce Vaughn sucks.
Yes.
But my thing is, I know that's a big one. But Kansas State and Chris Kleiman have been remarkable. They overshot even my lofty expectations last year, won the Big 12. I see this train continuing to roll with what he has going there, the program he's building. I absolutely love it. To me, I'll put it this way. 1 through 3 is a toss-up. And I think I'm projecting final standings more than I'm projecting champion in a way. I don't know, because I think it's truly a toss-up in the championship game. But yeah, I'm going with Kansas State as my Big 12 champ. My regular season champ. The only people who believe in that are Iowa State, I guess, and for this purpose is me. But yeah, I got the Kansas State Wildcats #1 here.
Blake, get after him here.
Okay, yeah, Bobby skirts over it. A lot of returning production, yes, but Deuce Vaughn was a significant part of their season last year. Not only in the running game, but throwing them out in the slot. Like, that's kind of what killed TCU when it came down to the Big 12 championship. We also have to remember this K-State team does not perform well in the regular season. Like, I know Bobby is tooting their horn because they did win the Big 12 championship. They had 3 losses. They lost to TCU. They lost to Texas. They lost to Tulane in the regular season. This team has a lot of flaws, even when they were at their best last year. Malik Knowles, too, an underrated piece that's leaving.
Yes.
I Bobby, I do not see it. Their defense, they don't return a lot from. I know they get some transfers, but they're a developmental program, which I think really increases their floor. But like, that's kind of what you're going to see from last year, where they have 3 losses coming into the Big 12 championship and kind of rely on the other teams to be bad. I don't see them just running through their schedule. They never do it. They're like, that's the one thing Kansas State does do is they never run through their schedule. They're never the 11-1 team, like maybe the Colin Klein years and stuff like that. But even in these like pivotal years for Chris Kleiman, when he looks good, they're still not having great records at the end of the season. They wouldn't have been in I guess they would have been in a New Year's Six bowl just because they were in the Big 12 championship at the end of the year. But like, they are like, you see that on the left-hand side on the YouTube, 10-4. They lose their biggest, I think one of their biggest assets on offense. Nope. No,
I'll say this
I
too.
do not see them. No, I that's why I have them at 4. They have a solid floor, but their ceiling, they do not have the ceiling to crack, I think, the top 2.
I'm going to take my prediction another notch to make it weirder and more K-Statey. I think they lose to Troy, lose to Texas, and that's it.
I could see that. See, that's what K-State does, though. Like,
but it doesn't matter for the Big 12. Like,
I know that. I know that, but like that's indicative of that team is that they just lose these random games and like I think they go to Missouri this year or they play Missouri at home. Oh, yeah, they go to Missouri. And I'm not saying like I think they're gonna beat Missouri, but like that's like those are losable games, and I know they're not conference games, but it's like it just shows this K-State team loses a lot of games. They lose a lot of games usually.
Right, but they have 5 road games at Missouri. Yeah, that's tricky. At Oklahoma State, they should beat them. At Texas Tech, I think they beat them. At Texas, that should be a loss, even though they have been spicy against the Longhorns in the past. And then you have Kansas on the road. That's basically a home game for you, at least a split. So yeah, the rest I feel like are very manageable. Iowa State's at home, TCU's at home, Houston's at home, Baylor, UCF. I think the schedule just sets up so perfectly for them. And you're right, I am worried about that loss. Like you bring up Malik Knowles, massive name. I'm blanking on the guy's last name, but they lost a massive defensive player, the Big 12 defensive player of the year as well.
Dylan Gabriel.
Oh my God. So yeah, they do lose a lot.
Felix and Uzoma, the edge rusher.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Kansas State fans. I know you'll forgive me because I put you number 1. But no, yeah. Here's my thing. I do think I think the schedule is a big part of it too. I'm so sorry. I'm hogging this. Jameson, I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I am excited for you to talk yourself into a hole about number 1. I completely agree with Blake. I think Kansas State has, I think, to be honest with you, Klein might get himself a higher offensive coordinator job after this season, the way he's been pushing out. I don't know if he really wants to leave Kansas State because that's kind of his place, but he's going to get paid somewhere, I think.
I agree.
Klein Notre Dame OC?
Yeah. No, like Colin Klein.
Oh, not Klein.
Yeah.
God, I'm so sorry.
Like Notre Dame was going after him this season.
No, I forgot. Klein. No, I forgot Colin Klein's their OC.
Yeah. I think he's going to get paid. The thing is, Deuce Vaughn was such a big part of their game plan that their whole offense is going to just have to get overturned. And I understand people are still going to try to hype up. I saw Trayshawn Ward, transfer in from Florida State as a preseason second team Big 12 running back, which just blew my mind. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but still, like, they have at least some talent there. It's really going to hold on Will Howard's shoulders. Can he go out and show some of the tools that he showed during the season in his positive times? But he also had very low lows. We used to call Will Howard a joke of a quarterback until he showed us some things last year. Like, can he stay consistent? I really do agree with why you are saying that they're going to do well this season, Bobby, is they have a lot of their mid-tier opponents that they should have like a toss-up with at home in some of the games, that they're going to be tough, like Texas on the road. So that's kind of almost a scheduled L for them. I think that their coaching and their play calling will get them there. But in terms of talent on their team, I can't differentiate their talent between Texas Tech and TCU. There's really not. I could even argue that Texas Tech and TCU have better talent on their team.
I think that's fair. And with K-State, it's never been about talent. It's like they just figure things out. They did under Snyder. They're kind of doing that under Kleiman.
I just don't understand how that offense is going to take a jump to become the number 1 team in the Big 12 after having to. It's a complete retool for them. Like, the way that Deuce Vaughn played the game is so different as an offensive coordinator. You cannot go and say, okay, my offense last year with Deuce Vaughn, the way that I played, I'm going to play similar to that in Colin Klein. It is going to be so difficult. The way they used him in the slot, the way that just the basic run patterns that they use for him to have him shielded by their offensive linemen. It is very, very difficult to kind of move that into this season. They're going to have hiccups.
I think that's fair. I think all of those points are fair. Putting them at 1 is wild. I'm still standing by it.
And them only losing 1 Big 12 game is wild too. They're going to get upset.
Yep. That's the thing is there's somebody always that upsets them. It's guaranteed.
Ducking OU is also big, I feel like. I feel like that helps.
I don't know. They kind of have y'all's number. I feel like that's more of leaning towards win than a.
I think we always bite them back after they upset us, but I don't know. Ty,
I think Texas Tech and Baylor will be really, really tough games for them. But yeah, Ty, hit it.
That's fair. Ty, you got
Here's the thing. K-State has by far the second easiest schedule in the Big 12. Like we said, even if they have OU's. You don't think they have the second easiest schedule?
No, I think OSU and OU has easier schedules.
No, OSU does not. OSU can't have any because OSU's bad. So like it can't. Even if the people they're facing, it's closer to parity, right? Like if you look at like how many games should they win versus should they lose, K-State and OU, I think you can make an argument for they both have one game. OSU, I think, has an easy schedule, but they're also abysmal. But so what K-State has going for them, well coached, they don't have to play K-State, they don't have to play OU, so they have that going for them. Like we talked about, I think they lose the Texas game. Who knows with Texas, right? They still have to play TCU. I get my whole, look at my rankings on TCU, obviously, trying to be a little spicy, but I think there's a lot of potential for someone to upset. I think they lose to Texas. I think they get upset. And I think as this season develops, I could see them just losing a straight up another game, like, for example, Texas Tech, where it's a game where that team is just obviously better than they are. Same could be said for TCU. So I think with this K-State team, they have an easy schedule. From an OU fan's perspective, it is worrisome that, and sort of showing my cards here a bit going forward, it's worrisome that we might get in a situation as OU where when we're coming down to the end of the season and looking at who's going to be in the Big 12 championship game, K-State and Oklahoma are both sitting with one loss to Texas. And I worry that there's going to be some backroom bias BS that even though we're the bigger brand, we'll probably be the more deserving team, will get shut out from a Big 12 championship game just to spite us one more time out the door. That's my biggest worry with this K-State team, which is funny because it's not even necessarily about K-State. But I think realistically they lose at least two. Texas Tech, even if Texas Tech is not third in the Big 12, that maybe is a little spicy of a take. But I could see Tech beating this K-State team. And I like Texas beating them. I could see TCU beating them. So I can't put them really any higher. I mean, my 3 and 4 can be interchangeable, but I don't see this K-State team. Anything is possible. I could see situations where they could win the Big 12 for sure. I mean, Texas, who knows what Sark's going to do at any moment. Texas will always implode, even with super high 5 stars. Brent Venables, who knows with this Oklahoma team. But, I like K-State at 4, but I think their schedule, looking back at the schedules now after we've done this pod, I'm less and less confident about my Tech at 3, K-State at 4, because Tech certainly has the harder schedule there. But if they carry their way through it, then that's going to help.
K-State has a high floor. They don't have a high ceiling.
I'd agree with that. Well,
but you just put them at freaking
no.
1.
I wouldn't
what are
agree
you
with
talking about?
I'm thinking. I'm saying like overall.
Yeah, he thinks their floor is 1.
You have to agree to a high ceiling to win one. Like
it's a high ceiling, a high floor.
That's a huge ceiling. Like
basically, you're saying K-State could be contending for a playoff spot this year.
Yes, that's what it is.
Weird, but that's the thing is they kind of are and kind of aren't, because I think they're going to lose one in non-conference. I don't know.
They're not going to lose to Troy at home. That's just
They
being
lost to
I don't know.
Troy at home
I kind of
lost to some really dumb Sun Belt teams in the past.
I
And then
know.
turn around and beat OU.
But if you're saying that they're going to go 2 losses in the season, one of them's to Troy at home, I just can't get behind that.
It's college football. I'm trying to predict some chaos. You have to get weird with some of this.
See, now you've painted Bobby in a corner where he's trying to justify Big 12 champion, but also not even in contention for the playoff.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
This is
which is what Kansas State was last year.
Ty nailed it perfectly.
They literally were that last year.
Pander and Pate take right here. somehow said Troy could beat them, but also K-State's winning the Big 12 somehow paints a picture
Now,
where
Troy, that's a loss.
all teams feel good in the
Being
end of
really
this.
dumb. It's Kansas State is an agent of chaos. They make no sense, and that's why I have them winning the Big 12 somehow, or being in the Big 12 championship. I just have a feeling it's gonna happen.
They've lost so many. Like losing Deuce Vaughn, it cannot be like Deuce Vaughn to be as good as he is and drafted as highly as he is at just slightly taller than Kyler Murray just shows how great of a player he is.
All 5'5" of him.
I'm just saying, I think Kansas State finds a way to bounce back. But let's go ahead and let's go bounce back and move. I don't know. Just I'm optimistic.
I don't know. I don't know how you think they're going to do better than last year. I just don't. Whatever.
Okay, fine. We'll see. Let's move on to number 2. All of us agree on number 2. It's unanimous. The Oklahoma Sooners finished second in our predictions. 2022, a year to forget. 6-7, 5-8 against the spread. Yuck. But this year, their win total is 9-5. Getting positive odds on that one. Ty, I'll let you kick this one off. What are your thoughts on the Sooners this year, and what makes you think they're going to get back to Arlington?
So I will try to be as objective as I can. One, I want this to happen. Two, just to preface my argument again, if you're a Big Ten fan or an SEC fan or even a Pac fan, because you should be angry and wanting vengeance, the funniest possible thing is that the Big 12 championship is just OU versus Texas. That would be, for anyone but new Big 12 fans, that should be absolutely hilarious. I think that would be hilarious in a hater type of way towards the Big 12. Not that I want bad things for the Big 12. It would just be very funny. OU has the easiest schedule in the Big 12, I think. Again, make your arguments about like Oklahoma State, but OU should beat everyone on their schedule but one team, being Texas. I'm not saying OU is going to lose to Texas, but I mean, we play Arkansas State, SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, Iowa State. None of those teams. This OU team could take a step back from last year, right? But we shouldn't lose any of these games. Besides, Texas is the one that we shouldn't be favored in. So I really see that really, really going for OU. I really hope we do beat Texas. I think maybe it would be an upset. Viewers and Xavier Worthy, I think that's going to be such a lethal matchup against anyone this year. But I like OU's schedule lining up. I think, unfortunately, for a lot of these teams, when we were making the new Big 12 schedule for this year, all these teams that kicked OU last year sat down and engineered the schedule where they wouldn't have to play OU. And in doing so, I think they've almost burned themselves by giving an OU team that I think is trending upwards, certainly, but probably not going to be. I don't know if OU played every single other team in the Big 12, I don't know that they would be 2 at the end of the season. But these other teams have found a way to avoid playing OU, and I think it's going to bite them in the butt, and OU is going to end up playing Texas in the Big 12 championship game, and it's going to end up being worse for these other teams. They get embarrassed with, the most embarrassing thing would be the 2 teams that are leaving are your 2 championship teams. And then they leave. And I think K-State especially could probably beat this OU team, or would have a good chance to beat this OU team potentially in the regular season. And they've avoided playing OU and given OU just an easy schedule. So I know that y'all are probably going to give the OU homer takes here. So I wanted to sort of give the sales pitch towards people who maybe are on the fence or wouldn't otherwise cheer for OU. It would be very funny, and look at the schedule.
Just look at the memes. I love it. Jameson, your thoughts?
Yeah, first schedule. They avoid my number 3 overall in the Big 12, Kansas State. They avoid my number 4 overall in the Big 12, Texas Tech. And then Baylor, even though I have them at 7, I think, they're obviously a team that can be as talented as number 5 in the Big 12. Avoid them. And then get UCF, TCU at home. It's extremely favorable. And the thing is, we, as OU fans, I understand. We look at, the spread. Oh yeah, it's over 9.5. Like we're back in that same kind of OU conversation. This team had a losing record last year, and it's hard to take a big jump. So there will be some kind of, trips along the way. I don't think they can hop to a 1. But with this schedule, it's going to be very, very difficult not to be number 2. It's going to be difficult because there's going to be a lot of games where we're not going to look as good, but we're still going to get some W's just because the fact is the schedule is really like cookie cutter for us. What it's going to come down to for this Oklahoma team is, can Brent Venables put his stamp and actually make this defense and like a Brent Venables defense? Everyone will continue to look at Oklahoma as an offensive program, but our offense this year, I think, might just be par for the course. It's really going to come down to, can our stars on the defense come out and make big plays and hold teams to under, will there be games where we hold teams under 3 touchdowns? It's weird to say out loud, but I think we need to see these kinds of things from our players. And it really, you're looking at some of the leaders in the defense. Can Danny Stutzman turn himself from a tackling machine to also using his brain and doing the right fits and play a little bit better play and coverage? I think that's a huge story for this season. And then guys like Billy Bowman taking the next step in the secondary. Can we get a Deshaun McCullough, turn into a superstar on the edge, or will he continue just to be this athletic freak that only plays every once in a while? This team has some potential, but it's a very, very high floor with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think looking at it's a 10-win. It's a 10-win schedule, given who he has to play. Genuinely might be one of the easiest, lightest schedules OU's ever had. And to me, I think that sets the baseline of what this season's about. You only play, pardon me, you only play 3 teams that beat you last year. One of them is West Virginia. One of them is TCU, who's lost a lot of talent, and now that one's at home. And the other one's Texas, who obviously was, look, Texas is going to be favored against Oklahoma, but without a doubt. You beat a team 49-0. That's just the case. So to me, I feel like the schedule improves overall, avoiding Baylor, avoiding Tech, and then avoiding Kansas State as well. Absolutely massive. It's all about, but it is all about actually seeing the transfers, the defensive improvements, as Jameson was saying. Can Peyton Bowen make an impact? Is Rondell Bothroyd like the type of defensive lineman that can really make a difference on the line? That's where the difference will be made, because I think to me the offense, definitely took a step back on receivers, tight ends, total wild card. But I think Gabriel, you'll get what you get. I don't think we'll see anything that remarkable. Love the running back room, but they're still pretty unexperienced. You're looking for a probable loss to Texas, a very good team, and then potentially one other one on the schedule they lose to an inferior opponent, as is tradition. And right now, I'm just not finding it right now. Since he's not there to me, BYU's not there to me. Although I could see it happening just because Provo's weird. But to me, I have Oklahoma. I have Oklahoma going pretty far here. Are they a college football playoff level team? They could get there, but they don't deserve to be there.
I hope not. I really hope not.
I would rather make the playoff than not. I'd rather make the playoff.
No, not this again. Not this again. I will say, to Bobby's point, that this OU team will probably lose to an inferior opponent. To combine that with what's the funniest thing possible? The funniest thing possible is that OU somehow drops the game to Tulsa, which would just be...
God, no. Oh, no.
That would be the...
No,
Blake agrees. That would be the funniest thing possible.
Yes, it'd be hilarious, but
Tulsa's atrocious.
It'd be the...
That's what makes it funny.
It'd be the Oklahoma State game, which would hurt the most.
Yeah.
It really would.
Yeah,
but be funny. Yeah,
I mean, I think OU can figure this out. Get a really... I think they got a great draw. I think they're going to be improved, and it has to be improved. This has to be a vast improvement to be acceptable. And I think OU makes it back to Arlington. So that's my thoughts on that. Blake, go ahead.
You think you have them over Texas too? What it seems like. So do you think OU wins Red River?
No,
I think we have a
you'd
weird
have to.
situation where Texas.
Yeah,
I think Texas beats Oklahoma in Red River, but I think Texas loses twice. I think that's the difference.
Interesting.
I think Texas to me.
Mm,
I think people are overhyping them, and we'll get to them in a bit. But the loss of Bijan Robinson, the loss of Roshan Johnson, that is way, way big, and nobody's talking about that.
Okay.
To me, and I think
We'll get to
when
it.
yours is overblown, we'll get to that when we get to that. But Blake, what do you think about the Oklahoma Sooners this year?
Yeah, it was, y'all have kind of harped on all the major points. If we were doing the same round robin 10-team Big 12, I'm not putting OU at 2, 100%. I don't think they are the second best team in the Big 12. But they've been gifted the schedule from the gods where they really only have 2 games in conference that should worry them. One being Texas, the other one probably being TCU. TCU being at the end of the season, Texas at the middle, so it's not even like you have to go back to back. This is to me, and like this is going to sound like such a hater take, but this truly should be for OU fans the barometer for Brent Venables this year. If he cannot take y'all to 10-2, why would you trust him going to the SEC with this schedule and him not even 9-3? I think is a failure, just because it is set up so perfectly that it's like you only have 2 teams that you can possibly lose to. You're favored against TCU, and you rivalry game Texas. Anything can happen on that, even if one team's favored over the other. It's just a non-con, everything. It's so easy. You play a lot of the bottom dwellers with the Big 12. It's going to be the ultimate litmus test on whether Brent Venables really is the guy at OU. And I know OU probably wouldn't fire him after a 9-3 season, but if I was a fan, I would start to be calling for that if that happened with the schedule. And 9-3 is also, or I guess it would be 10-3. But yeah, it's one of those things I don't want to put OU as 2 because I don't think this is the second best team. But I can't talk myself into enough losses to shove them out of it. So yeah,
I'm with Blake. Look, if OU doesn't have, I'll turn this into a bit of a crazy take, but I am with Blake. If Brent Venables cannot, regardless of what the roster pans out to be, if Brent Venables cannot turn this into a 10-win regular season, OU needs to throw out the bag for Scott Frost or Charlie Strong because he's not the guy, right? Or Urban Meyer. Realistically, Urban Meyer, but Scott Frost or Charlie Strong would be better option. If he goes 9-3 in the regular season with this schedule, objectively, we're going to get steamrolled in the SEC. We're going to be Missouri with a slightly more budget. Under him at least. We should really carry this one. I mean, two numbers stand out to me with this. 8-8. We play 8 games within the state of Oklahoma. And like Jameson sort of touched on, but he didn't throw the number out there. Really the weak point for all the jokes I make about Dylan Gabriel, the big weak point that lost us a lot of games last year was the defense. We were averaging mid-30s points per game, if I remember correctly. And for all the jokes I make about Dylan Gabriel, you really shouldn't be losing as much as we did when you're averaging 35, 36 points per game. That's atrocious. And within the transfer portal, we brought on 8 new defensive people. So 8 out of 11, that's a really high turnover in our big problem spot. I know we have some turnover at receiver and whatnot, but I really think that this should be OU's year to at least get a 10-win season.
Well, and also, I also do want to say a lot of the losses last year were very close. Outside of Texas, outside of TCU, one possession, field goal level losses. The execution has to improve. Third downs have to improve. Special teams have to improve. The little details, you've got to fix that. And to me, I feel like those are things that, a more disciplined, a more, seasoned team, under Venables will get done right. So I don't know. I'm optimistic, but all right, guys, let's move on to number 1. Ty, Blake, Jameson, you all have Texas number 1. I have them at 3.
Tale as old as time. Bobby always tries to, get ahead on the Texas choke. Sometimes it's worked, but the majority of times it hasn't.
Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it
I feel like
doesn't.
the majority of the time it works.
Yeah,
No.
I feel.
They choke the majority of the time.
They do choke a lot.
No, but Bobby was late to the party on it though. Like Bobby started doing it after their first choke year.
We
Like,
need to go
They've
back
been
and-
choking since like 2010.
Yeah,
like, no, I'm talking about like the losses to like the first loss to Kansas.
I
kind
was
of
way
thing.
too pessimistic on him last year. Jameson's right on
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
But this is 3, and I think for a lot of the reasons like OU's get like where they are at 2. Texas is at 3 to me because their schedule's tougher, because you have Tech, because you have Baylor, because you have Kansas State. They're fortunate that they get those games at home. But I just
Baylor's on the road.
Baylor's on the road. Yeah, that's right. So
Bobby
to
knew
me-
that. That's it. It's the joke.
No, I forgot. That is a joke. But my thing is like Baylor, I feel like Texas just has a lot of pitfalls. And this is a team that looked unfocused last year, couldn't finish the job against inferior opponents. Look at Oklahoma State, for example. Texas Tech, although that was a bit of a weird situation, with Quinn Ewers being hurt and just the whole circumstances of that game, super odd. But that's just Texas to me. I feel like they're going to find a way to lose these games. Whenever they come in super hyped, it just doesn't go well. And I think to me, that's where they take that step back. I think that's where they just lose games that they shouldn't lose. And I think that's why I have them at 3. I think their talent is good enough to win a lot of ball games to get them right in the conversation for this. But I think ultimately they're going to be a step behind. I think it's going to be a real tight race between OU, K-State, and Texas, though. I think it's going to be a thrilling title race for those 3 when it comes down to getting in the championship. But ultimately, I'm not buying this Texas team, not with the loss of Roshan Johnson first. That's weird. Bijan Robinson and Roshan. And I just think Quinn's overrated. I'm just kind of out on this Texas team. What is it they say at TCU, Blake? All steak, no sizzle. This is all sizzle.
Yes, all steak, no sizzle, baby.
Yeah, no, this is a nice. I think Texas. I'm just kind of out on them.
All
in here,
steak,
but
no sizzle. Why would so? You
No,
still
they
get
got it
a lot of
backwards.
meat.
They got it. They got
All
it
sizzle, no
backwards.
steak, maybe.
Yeah, you're
Because
just
you get
describing
it
none
sous
of the
vide.
meat.
No,
No,
you want
it's
the meat. You don't want the flashy stuff. You want the good, the fundamentals, the day in
Yes.
and day out. You want the good.
What
Yeah.
he's trying to say is all sizzle, no steak. It's all marketing and chatter and stuff, but there's no meat there.
That's what
Yeah.
I was saying. They don't have any meat to them. And I think that's Texas.
So all sizzle, no steak.
Or TCU's motto this year is all steak, no sizzle. So it's the opposite of what.
Oh,
That's what's getting confused.
I didn't understand the joke because I didn't understand. Okay, I get it.
All steak, no sizzle is also a very terrible, not a good steak.
That's
It's
just
hilarious.
We like it tartar, baby.
You just boiled the steak.
It's just sous vide, and then you're like, I feel like I forgot a step.
We're good.
We like it tartar, just ripping it.
It's a
ripping
milk
it,
steak.
the raw meat.
Milk steak boiled raw with some jelly beans. Anyways,
What?
Jameson, your thoughts on the Hornets? Why do you like them this year?
Yes, they're going to take a step back with losing Bijan because Bijan is like extremely talented running back. Like it's hard to think of how they can replicate what he had. But yes, I also think Quinn Ewers is a little bit overrated, but Quinn Ewers has an exceptional target room in terms of wide receiver and tight end for Texas. At wide receiver, Xavier Worthy, one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the country. No, not the best. He's like top 3. Marvin Harrison being the best, but still,
we got a generational.
Yes, but still, like Xavier Worthy is an exceptional wide receiver, like really, really good. Get a transfer from Georgia and A.D. Mitchell. You also have Jordan Whittington there. And then at tight end, you have one of the best tight ends in the Big 12, maybe in Jatavian Sanders. Like it's a very, very good target room to make him look good. And they still got some good running backs that will play well. Like Jaden Blue's guy in the up and up, and Keelan Robinson showed some things as a change of pace back. So yes, the running back room might not be their strength. I just think that their passing game is just going to be so hard to cover all of those really, really good wide receivers that it's going to make Quinn Ewers look good. Like Quinn Ewers will get the ball off and get it in his playmakers' hands. And that's just something that a team like Oklahoma and absolutely not K-State has. Oklahoma does not have the amount of talent in that wide receiver and tight end room like Texas. It's the complete opposite almost from what Texas has. And then in terms of the defense, yeah, they might have lost, Overshown, their big guy, but they still have so much talent there as well. Just looking at, they've got like Jalen Ford, the linebacker, Jaron Thompson's a really good safety. They got Byron Murphy, also really good, the defensive lineman. Ryan Watts, the cornerback. Like that, they've got a lot of players there that will make a really good Texas team. And I think this is a Texas team that will actually be a for real power. Like I think that they have a chance to beat Alabama this year, and I think that people are going to put a lot of respect on Texas. And it's going to be a very, very weird feeling of them moving into the SEC, as in like Texas didn't get a lot of respect, and everyone is making fun of them going to the SEC. I think they're going to make a huge splash this season, and it's going to make OU fans quiver a little bit, like we're the one that we're in trouble. I know, weird to say out loud.
Look, here's the thing. First off, Texas is still Texas. Like, who we know of Texas as a joke. And like Sark, I'm not trying to dog on Sark, but Sark is not that guy. Sark is not Nick Saban. Sark is not Kirby Smart. Sark isn't even Jimbo Fisher. That's a hot take, but Jimbo Fisher has some natties. Has a natty. Texas is still going to have it. What I mean by Texas is still Texas. They're still going to have massive talent that they will underdevelop. Sark is just underdeveloping them less than previous coaches at Texas have. Here's a hot take. You guys might agree with me. Mac Brown is a better coach than Sark. Texas would be better off right now had they stuck with Mac Brown through all this than they are right now with Sark. They just have so much talent on this team. I want to say that my rankings, I think I've approached this a little bit differently than y'all. These are my preseason rankings. Like, this is what I expect, but at the same time, it's not what I expect the outcome to be, if that makes sense. Like, these are my preseason rankings. I understand that, especially in the Big 12, anything's possible. But I think preseason, Texas will underdevelop these guys. They will underperform from what they should with the level of talent that they have and with the schedule that they have. But I think that this year, the amount of talent that they have is so high compared to their schedule. It doesn't matter if they don't get the full potential out of these guys. I agree. I don't think Quinn Ewers is necessarily all that amazing. I would like for him to win the Heisman just so Caleb Williams doesn't, again, because if Caleb doesn't, who's going to? They're not going to give it to a receiver as much as Marvin Harris Jr. at Ohio State probably deserves it. But I think Xavier Worthy is going to make, he's going to make problems for people on this schedule. He's going to make problems within the Big 12. He's going to make Quinn Ewers look really, really good. You got to remember that this is a guy who was one of the best receivers in college football last year with a broken hand. He played with a broken hand for the last half of the season and was still easily top 50 in terms of receivers in college football last year. You don't always recover from that, but I just think that when you're looking at preseason rankings, I feel like if you simulated this season 1,000 times, Texas would come out as the champion 501 times. And for that reason, I have him as my number one.
That's fair. I think that's very fair.
Yep. And I think it just, when you're evaluating the number ones, it's like, I'm looking at ceiling. I'm like, ceiling. Like, if you play to your best, like, are you going to win it? Texas is by far and away the most talented team, like, has the most talent on their roster in the Big 12. No question about it. I'm kind of with you, Bobby. Like, I will agree. It's like, I give this pick hesitantly because I feel like I always choose Texas higher than they probably should because they seem to like never hit their ceiling. But I just feel like this year's different. I just feel like they have the talent. I'm a big Quinn Ewers guy. I think Quinn Ewers, like, if they would have had him for the rest of the Bama game, they're beating Bama. they're also beating Tech. Like they're picking up more wins there just because they have Quinn Ewers. Like I know he had his struggles, but he was a freshman last year and still played pretty dang well. And I think he's going to play even better this year. And even if that doesn't happen, they're loaded in their quarterback room. Like besides Arch Manning, my new Anthony Richardson is Malik Murphy. That guy looks good in shorts, good in the cutoff. He looks fantastic. Malik Murphy might be one of those guys. I'm kind of hoping it works this way. He never plays he doesn't play significant minutes ever in the regular season, just puts on a highlight tape of spring practices, basically the spring games, and somebody takes him in the NFL draft. Like, I think he's just prototypically that dude, and I don't think we'll ever see him. I hope he doesn't transfer. I want that to happen. I want him to go first round, and we've never seen what this guy has ever done at the college stage. But I think this Texas team's so talented. I can't not choose them as one. As hard as it is to say that, I want them, like, this would be a hilarious season. Like, I always laugh. I get a little chuckle at like a season like OU happened last year, but I get even more of a chuckle when I feel like OU fans are pretty, after last year, like know what their roster is, know what their team is. These Texas fans think they have a CFP contender or a CFP like making it in. Like they think they're going to run the table easy, and nothing would make me happier than like a classic 9-3, 8-4 Texas year this year. That would be the funniest thing. It would that would be the ultimate send-off with this program, especially how everything has gone over the last 12, 13 years. So I'm rooting against myself. I think they're the most talented. We've kind of established that, but I just hope that like Texas way butts in somehow and they end up worse for it.
Texas going out the way they've existed the entire time in the conference.
Is there potential that this Bama game, regardless of how it goes, do you think that's going to boost Texas's credibility, so to speak, at all? Like, even if they lose that one?
I think so. If they lose it close, then it's like it just kind of, they're just like, they're
we got set up for that one.
Podcast,
but hey, they're really
the only
listeners. Lost mention.
Podcast, the bottom says
exactly what I said.
I apologize.
We need a little sound, like some sort of sound bite or like bell that rings or something whenever someone mentions a quality loss boosting a schedule.
Like a little alarm or something. Quality loss.
But if they win that game, the hype train's going to be off the, like, it's going to be insane. It's just going to be ridiculous. And then that's when I hope they slip up. Like, honestly, I hope for the win at Bama and then just struggle through the Big 12 schedule.
I mean, nothing would be funnier than win at Bama and then 2 weeks later lose to Baylor.
Yep, that would be, I would love that. I would love that.
That would be so great.
And I will point out this, like, since we do weekend spread gambling, it's ridiculous that Texas is odds-on favorite now. Like, you have to lay money in order for Texas to win the Big 12 championship. That is nuts. Like, I think that if you've seen this conference the last 10 years, and I know OU has dominated it for most of that time, but there was interchangeably people at second consistently. It's not like these two programs were running the town at the whole time. OU was dominating, and then everybody else would kind of file in for second. OU's not as strong. I don't think Texas is reaching that level that OU was, where it was like kind of a guaranteed to be there, whether it be Texas to be go against them again or just some other like Big 12 program. Odds on favorite just makes absolutely no sense, I think, for Texas. Do not lay that money. Do not. That is a dumb investment.
I agree.
It's dumber than the Tech one. It's dumber than the Tech one, in my opinion.
Well, because at least Tech, there's upside.
Yes. There's no upside to this. Like,
either they do something they haven't done in like 14 years, or you win and get less money back. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's not
You've
good.
locked your money up for the entire season just to like win like a bet that you could win on any other game throughout to like the entire season. Like, you're not it. I don't think it provides that much edge that it's like, a Georgia or like something that you're laying significant odds. Like, basically you see it as like a bond that's going to pay you a little interest at the end of it. That's not this Texas team. I don't believe in them that hard.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what was the year that Texas was in the Natty? Was it
2010.
2010? Yeah, so
2010 in the 2009 season.
Texas is only a year off of being nationally relevant than Tech, right? Like Tech was last nationally relevant. What, 08?
Oh, no. Well, I mean,
Was Tech nationally relevant in 09?
Tech, no. Well, no, not really.
See, Tech was nationally relevant in 08. The last time that Texas was really nationally relevant was only a year later. So, yeah, to Blake's point, it is kind of confusing that everyone has this idea that they've been the upper crust of the conference for forever when, they've been, I guess, the second to last one to be in a national championship game, but it was a long time ago.
They have three Big 12 championships. Only 3. They came during like best McCoy year, best Vince Young year, and a random one in the 90s when they beat Nebraska. So it's not. Yeah, they've hardly done.
Is that the same number as Baylor?
Yes.
Yes, they don't even have the most in the state.
No. Yeah. I'm not good. It's not good. I mean, Drake Kirkpatrick, as people said, a player who played in the in that national championship against Alabama, now has a son who committed to Alabama. So in that time frame, Texas has been to 1-0 Big 12 championships, and had a player's son do it. So that's just nuts. It's nuts. We're at the 2-hour mark. This is about the end of the show. I don't think there's any other takes to be had in the Big 12. We have juiced this orange fully. There's no orange left. It's just gone. But does anyone have any final takes before we go off? One sentence. Jameson?
Texas Tech will do better than TCU this year.
Blake?
TCU will do better than Tech this year, and I think we're going to have a very fun Big 12 year. I think it's only just going to get you more excited for what's to come from the Shield in the coming years. So I'm excited for it. I really am. Like, this is going to be the one of the funnest conference. It's not going to be one. It's going to be the funnest conference year to year. I guarantee you. Once OU and Texas leaves.
Well, that's a run-on sentence. Ty, what do you think? One sentence.
The funniest possible thing to happen in the Big 12 this year would be for the two teams who are leaving to be in the championship game, regardless of who wins. Semicolon, UCF, Central Florida will be the most entertaining team to watch. It will involve 3 to 4 spectacular implosions, but it will also involve some inexplicably scrappy shootouts at the bottom of the barrel.
I think it's going to be a great conference. I'm excited to see what happens. And ultimately, yeah, I'm going to miss it a little bit. I'm excited for the SEC, but the Big 12 had some great memories. So looking forward to enjoying the most of it. Well, folks, that is it. No more conference previews. No more bye-bye Big 12. Put that away. Actually, no, that's a good one. You can keep the score. It's week 0. College football is this Saturday, folks. And you know what that means. You know what that means, boys. We're back into the trenches. It's weekend spread on Wednesday, week 0. We're making picks. I can't wait. I cannot wait. But until then, until Wednesday, we'll see you then. We'll see you on Wednesday. Have a good one, everyone. Good luck out there.